We tend to have these stereotypes about poverty and violence as somehow rooted in bad choices. But I think what we really need to understand is that poverty and violence is the result of policies that are advantaging some and disadvantaging others. My name is Forrest Stuart, and I'm a sociologist. I study urban poverty, and my work puts a face on the statistics. So I show how social and economic and racial inequality really seeps deep into the everyday life of marginalized communities. Down, Out, and Under Arrest is a study that I did in Skid Row, Los Angeles. And it's a study to try and get at what the everyday effects are for living in a criminalized neighborhood. I spent 5 years on the streets of Skid Row, working with organizations, getting to know residents, spending time in shelters. And I think it's really central to my work to get to know folks on an intimate level, so that we can really take an empathetic and compassionate look at populations that are typically demonized and stereotyped. In my work, I think it's really important that we show how what looks like might be an irrational behavior from the outside looks actually really rational if you're sitting in that person's shoes and you're seeing the world through their perspective. Ballot of the Bullet is about how digital social media and cultural content production online is changing the organization and interactions between gang-associated youth in Chicago on the South Side. And the book tells a story about how in this context where we have diminishing opportunities for young black men in these neighborhoods, and we've got increasing demonization of these young men, they're turning to online forums. They're turning to social media because in today's day and age, sensational content gets likes, it gets clicks. A really interesting thing that happens when you begin doing field work and you begin closing your mouth and listening to people, and that's that you realize that very few times in their lives are they able to tell their stories with authority and expertise. I think the groups that I do research with, homeless folks on Skid Row, hyper-criminalized communities, young gang-associated men on the South Side of Chicago. These are all people who are talked a lot about, and when we allow them to speak their truth, I think that's the basis of trust, and that's the basis of empathy. And I think that that's why folks allow me and allow ethnographers into their lives, because it's really hard not to tell their story well and properly when we actually give them the time to tell the story how they want to tell it. I want to change the way that we think about young people growing up in violent neighborhoods. And once we begin realizing just how deeply traumatized young people are and how no one should have to experience that, then suddenly we can make a whole lot more and better sense of why we see violence unfolding in the future.